All right, Michael Whittaker, we appreciate you jumping on our podcast. It's always good to have other business owners and just folks around the country doing things in the home services space with us, as that is our business and huge interest for us to gather insights from other folks that have been in this space. So I certainly don't want to butcher your intro or do you any sort of injustice. So I will pass it over to you for a quick intro.
Appreciate having me on. My first formal podcast, so I'll probably do enough butchering myself. So, my name is Michael Whittaker. I'm down here in Fort Worth, Texas. Owned a pretty large commercial landscape business for 17 years and just recently sold it in May.
Nice.
Made a random post on a business page, and that's how we got connected here.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, and I definitely want to dive into that because I think, for us, my business, when I say us, my business partner, Ted, and I, we started Junk Raider about 6 years ago here in Charlotte. And we're certainly not at the 17-year range like you are, but I'm incredibly interested at the personal level of, folks that have built something and then sold it, exited, because there's obviously a million different things you can do with the business when you start it, one of which is exiting. Two is holding on to it and growing it forever and handing it off to your kids or whatever you want to do with it. And a million other options of joining other existing brands to help, maybe go and franchise the model or bring on other business lines underneath it, whatever the case may be. But just as like a general question, Michael, what made you want to sell that business?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get a quick answer for everybody that asked me, but in short, I felt like I ended up just kind of getting to the end of what I felt like I could do there. And I wanted to go scratch some other itches really bad. And so I seemed like I was pretty distracted every day when I was at work, looking at the what ifs and what was I potentially missing out on.
Right. Got it. And talk to us a little bit, just kind of give the audience a little view of like what this business looked like. Single location, how many guys, girls did you have that worked for you? What did you guys do exactly in the landscaping business, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so let me kind of give you guys an idea of scale of what happened. So I was broke when I graduated TCU in 2007. I had no idea what to do. I started cutting grass. I was in the IT business. Terrible time to be in the IT business. And XTO Energy called me off of a Craigslist ad and asked me if I'd service some of their well sites. I had no idea what well sites were. Google was around, but people weren't using the internet, at their hands. So I was like, yeah, I'll show up. And it was a 1 acre site. I had a 21-inch push mower, started with, it was actually stolen. I didn't steal it, but it was just a really rough grinder beginning, and got very blessed with a few accounts, and then worked my real-time job in this. And when I looked up, I realized I was doing more in lawn care than I was at real job. So kind of like you, I started actually a junk business in 2010 called Junk Junkies. And it's, man, some pretty gross stuff. So I thought the landscape business had less gross stuff. So my twin brother moved down, sold his company in Lubbock, similar space, and we grew it to a couple million. Then we branched out our fence division called Magnolia Fence and Patio. My brother's still operating that. We divided our partnership in 2020 or 2021. Just had different goals, different directions. I could really see it was happening. So after COVID, I think for the service industry, COVID was a great thing for us. And so when many people got scared, we kind of just went all in, and we grew from a $3.5 million business to $7.5 million. And when I sold, I had 26 operating trucks and 80 employees that reported to me. So I had a leadership team of 8. We had one location, but multiple buildings across this span of street. We took up several acres.
Yeah.
So we were pretty big. Dallas Fort Worth, there's, 100 million plus companies here, but I would say that we were definitely in the top as far as people being concerned about us.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's amazing.
so
I'm always curious just because I've got a sales gene in me, and I'm always thinking through that lens as I build the company. Sales is the lifeblood of any company, right? If you don't have customers and revenue, then you can't do much
right.
else. Outside of word of mouth, and I think you mentioned luck early on. Like, what did you guys lean into throughout the growth of your business to say this is really kind of where we're finding our niche in the sales respect? Is it door hangers, yard signs, cold calling? What is it that you guys found success in?
Yeah, so my brother does coaching, consulting, and helps people with their sales programs. And I
Okay.
always have a tough time saying, what did we do to really grow our brand? And I think the most important thing that we did that cost us nothing was we always answered our phones. And people say that, but I mean, we always did 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. If you had a problem, we were going to solve it. And so just being extremely available to everybody. And when we get that trigger, I was listening to or reading something else that you did, actually listening to it. And when they called us, we were coming to visit you that day. If not, we were probably not going on that call, because
Yeah.
after that 24-hour mark, that business is gone, whether you realize it or not. And now
Mhm.
I just think that reputation, as well as I did a lot of Facebook. I didn't find any other social media platforms that did well. We ran ads, but we were constantly in front of people. So I think
Yeah.
people always wanted to call us, but we had to touch them at the right time. And if they thought about us at 7 p.m. on a Friday, which happened all the time, then we were available to answer that phone call and see them on Saturday morning. So
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear you say that because that's what Ted and I lean into very heavily within our business because junk removal is not brand new to the marketplace, much like landscaping and anything else home service related. And so if you're not doing what I call the simple things right, then what good are you? And I use the not analogy, but I use my own life's experience with just contractors and anybody that comes to my home to do anything, install French doors, cut the grass, remove junk, fix my garage, roofing. And I mean, I can count on one hand or less how many companies I've worked with or just reached out to, and the experience has been really stellar. Like it's almost always a grind to get in touch with somebody, for them to be responsive, for them to provide not just like give me a timely quote back or an estimate, but like make it easy for me to understand because I'm not in your world. And so it's
yeah, so
refreshing to hear you say that.
you almost feel lucky when they answer the phone.
Yeah,
And so I didn't want people to feel that way with
yeah,
us. And so, yeah,
yeah,
I guess our presentation, our delivery of quote, all of that, even though it necessarily wasn't marketing, it's what allowed us to grow. The
yeah.
phone calls were not sparse. Maybe our name, 26 trucks on the road, but it was purely, like you said, doing the things right and doing
Mm,
them swiftly. Amazon teaches you how to run your business. Do it quickly and
yeah.
efficiently. And if you can't do that, people are so used to it, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
So,
totally. And then on the marketing side, kind of back to my original question about just how you got sales, I kind of how you answered it was what I would, outside looking into that industry, because I've never been in it, is kind of what I would assume works. So, a lot of word of mouth referrals, building up business that way. Maybe some paid ads, but a little bit of Facebook. For us on the junk removal side, we are heavy into paid ads, right? Google AdWords, that sort of thing, because our industry is very knee jerk. Sally Sue walks out in her garage and is overwhelmed by the junk on a random Saturday, and she's calling everybody to figure out how to get rid of it. And if you're not answering the phone, you're kind of screwed out of that business. So we lean in heavily into that. We don't do, I mean, we've got our social media accounts, our LinkedIn's, our Instagrams, our Facebooks, but it's not like, we're getting business every day from that. So that's kind of our side of the house. Just as a note, talk us through kind of just what that selling process was, right? So you decided to sell, you posted. How did you find your buyer? Did you find him on a Facebook group, or how did you find the buyer? Talk us through that.
oh man, it depends on how much detail you want. I can tell you the juiciness of it, or I can just get down to the brass tacks. It's whatever
Yeah,
you'd like to hear.
we love
Which would you
juicy
prefer?
details if you want to highlight them.
So, like anybody in the service industry, and this isn't to try to demotivate anybody, but you have your days,
Yeah.
and you're just, why am I doing this? And then you go have a stellar day, and the profits are great, everything went smooth, and you're like, that's why I do this, or I
Yeah.
get to be outside, or whatever it might be. And so I was having one of them days, and I got a call from um, my ex-wife's best friend, and I hadn't spoken to him in 10 years. And I was like, this is weird. And he
Yeah.
had bought the parts and supply house that we had bought most of our equipment from.
Hmm.
And the owner, who I was very close with, made him call me to do the introduction because we were the largest account there. And I instantly called Wayne, and was like, hey, man, send me your broker's name. And I need to talk to him like right now. And it was just one of those days. And I called the broker, ended up having a really weird connection. I went to school with his kids um, in Austin, and they're twins. I'm a twin. His
Hmm.
business partner's son was my little brother in the fraternity. So it just felt like it was the right, everything was telling me, this is, if you're going to do it, this is right.
Yeah.
So we went to market for a total of 11 months. My broker told me to be, it's going to sell in 12 months is what it's going to take. If I
Hmm.
can't sell it, I'm not going to even try. My
Yeah.
broker worked off of a small fee per month, and then took a payment at the end. And I highly suggest that be the process. You want him working for you,
Yeah.
or he did all of the valuation, and we did it every month. Every month that we were in business, we redid it. And that, unfortunately, that value went up and down, up and down, up and down, because of the seasonality of my business. And we started to get a little bit nervous as rates for SBA were going up. SBA is not a great person to sell to for many different reasons, but we I instantly knew I didn't want to sell the capital money. It was not attractive. I didn't want to do an earn out. I did not want to go into essentially business with somebody that knew more about business than I did and had a lot more money than I did. So I shrunk my box after this deal fell apart, and I said, John, if you cannot bring me this person, I don't want to sell. My wife and I had pretty much decided, hey, we're going to get ready for the 2024 season, and we met these two women, and they just kind of blew our minds as far as their vision. And pretty much from the moment that we met them, it took 4 months to close, and there was a lot of attorneys, not so much negotiations as it was just making sure the liability was there, because it was a large transaction. So, it was towards the end, I had a lot of deal fatigue. So did they.
Yeah.
You become very emotionally involved. Um, and then the day you sell, everything changes.
Yeah.
So,
I bet. Yeah. As a person who's never sold a company, never bought a company, I can only imagine what that process is like. It makes a lot of sense what you're saying. Um, so look, your next step. I know you mentioned you've got some itches you wanted to scratch. What's kind of, if you don't want to disclose specifics, totally
no,
fine.
I don't. No, I don't mind.
All right.
Maybe you can help work through some of my thoughts. So,
Sure.
as entrepreneurs, we have 100 ideas per day. We hope that nobody pays attention to the 99 that were just thoughts, right?
Mm,
Unfortunately, employees typically listen to the 99 that you don't do.
yeah.
And so I knew that I wanted to be in whatever I did. I wanted to have more control of my day. Every single day I got up and I went to work because my customers, my employees, my vendors needed me to. It's not a very passive way to make income being in the service industry. Maybe someone can figure out the formula, but I really don't. I have yet to meet somebody that can. It's very involved. So I wanted to build a brand that could allow me to be more flexible. If it was in the contractor space, that I could work on longer projects that required a little bit more thinking, that required more capital to do. And so I've got one company called Onyx Design Build, where I'm trying to make it a consulting company for large properties to kind of give a health of their company or their property. Just from a build perspective, their contracts in place, their capital improvement budgets, everything. That's one of the things I'm working on. I'm going to maybe push some snow this winter, just because I need something to do to kind of keep my brain, busy. But going into 2024, if it doesn't create some form of passive or residual income, I don't plan on doing it. And that was my number one mistake before I sold, was I didn't have multiple streams of income. And so when I sold, that was it. I was
Yeah.
restarting. There was nothing else coming in, and my family was operating at a very high expense level. And
Sure.
so those are the things that nobody coached me on when I sold was, yeah, you might have all these plans to learn guitar or learn Spanish or, go visit there, but you need to have streams of income coming through
Right.
well before, and probably a business established, because if you don't have 2 years in business, banks aren't going to take you seriously. And once you sell your business, that's it.
Yeah.
It's there's
That was
there's
one of
no
the
more.
toughest things. Yeah, sorry to cut you off. I was going to say that was one of the toughest things when we started Junk Raider was, you know, early on. Junk removal is a low barrier to entry market, which is good for folks who don't have much capital. But once you get into it and you start acquiring contracts, especially commercial ones where their payment terms are extended, no, they don't pay on site at the end of a job, things like that. And you realize, hey, I need to go to a bank and look at getting a loan or a line of credit or a credit card or anything like that. You're hit with a reality of, well, we need to see 2 to 3 years of, your company history. And we're like, well, we've been here for 3 months or 6 months. We don't have that. So just kind of like a sidebar there. But in terms of like the home services space in general, Michael, are you interested in staying in that?
Yeah, so I think there's home services that are copy, paste, rinse, repeat. I even think that lawn care could potentially be that, but lawn care, my analysis of it is it's not a good place to be. Equipment's getting really expensive. Labor's getting harder to find. It is labor intensive. Extreme weathers make it very unpleasant to work outside, and it's not sexy.
Yeah.
And so, if I can't pay a tech 25 an hour, I don't think I'd look at it.
Mm.
I've got a pest control and herbicide license. I would like to start just a real casual route with an older tech that doesn't have any interest in starting their own. This is a very low margin, but a pool route. And the only reason being is because as a pest control and herbicide, you're only touching them a few times a year. And so that's
Yeah.
essentially that same tech could be servicing both
Mm.
to keep them busy. And there's not a lot of room for error in any of that.
Yeah.
Whereas even with lawn care, I mean, I've got friends that flip mowers on top of guys, and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So like with you with junk, you guys show up and you think it, because I know, because I did junk, you
Yeah.
think it's going to be this much in your truck, and it's this much, and you're just
Mhm.
like, whoa.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
then the PPE that you have to worry about at times. I'm not interested in any of that. So I'm looking
Mm.
for the stuff that nobody else is looking at right now.
Yeah.
Because I also don't have to hit the home run ball anymore.
Yeah.
So
I definitely think there's interesting lines within home services, and it may not be kind of the traditional stuff that folks think about: junk removal, roofing, garage door fixes, handyman. Um, but something like mobile oil changes is an interesting one, which is home
I like that.
services. You're showing up, to somebody's home and doing a service, but it's not like you're doing it on the home. You're doing it for their vehicles. That would be something that's interesting. I haven't researched it, the ins and outs of, based on what you don't want to see, right? If you don't want to be totally in it, or the extreme weather, or not sexy. I mean, I have no clue what the numbers and all that stuff look like, but it's an interesting one to to potentially look at, and honestly, a market that I didn't even know existed. Like I know about Safe Light, which comes out and they'll fix your windshield if you get a crack, which is great. But mobile oil changes. I mean, I think I recently looked it up, maybe last week when I first heard about it. I was like, what does it cost the consumer to do this? Like, is it astronomical? And it was like $100 bucks. Come out and change your oil. Do the typical stuff that you'd get if you took your car to a Jiffy Lube or a Take Five or whatever. And I was like, that is amazing. Like I'm using that the next time I need an oil change. So from a consumer perspective, I always kind of look at things like that in the sense of like what I consume this, like, does it make sense for me in my life? And if it is, and everything else aligns, then maybe it's something I pursue further. But I don't know, kind of a,
No,
kind
I like that idea. I'm not gonna say I'm the most creative guy when it comes to first to market on things. I'm more of a grinder,
of,
and but I think that's a great idea. I think any people are looking for time and they're looking for convenience. And I said it earlier, but Amazon has just completely changed the way everybody thinks about purchasing anything. I mean, I got windshield wiper blades, ordered them at 10:30 in the morning, and I got them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, granted, I'm in Dallas Fort Worth, so there's tons of hubs, but why would I stop my day to go do that?
totally.
And so I had mechanics, and I had to go get my first oil change. It's funny you brought that up, and I had no idea where to go because we didn't
Mhm.
use any mechanic shops. And
Yeah.
so, and they're like, here, come this way. I'm like, how long is it going to take? They're like, an hour and a half. I'm like, I would go in my office and I'd walk outside and my truck was ready, and so
Mhm.
I think that's definitely something that people would need, for sure, or anything that
Yeah,
saves time or convenience.
for sure.
So
But if somebody were, if you were consulting with somebody, whether they're a young person, middle age, older, and they're looking at the landscaping industry to get into, start from scratch, go in and buy, a franchise, whether that's an existing territory somebody's selling or it's a newly awarded territory under a brand that hasn't been sold yet. What would your advice to that person be coming from that industry and knowing what you knew after 17 years? Like what would you tell them? Like, hey, Michael, give me the good, bad, and the ugly of this. What am I not knowing? What am I not, what am I potentially getting myself into that I don't know about? All that stuff.
yeah, so let's pretend it's kind of like a neutral market, right? So it's not like we're talking about Texas and New York here, where there's
Yeah.
two completely different elements. So let's just say kind of a neutral, like, where I would say that if you're running it solo, you can do quite well. I think there's a huge market for it. We could not service accounts and be profitable on it, so we were turning away dozens of accounts per month that we just funneled into smaller guys, and I didn't have that starting out. So I think that there's definitely a market for the chuck in the truck, the one guy,
Yeah.
but that's dangerous because if you get hurt, that's it. There's
Yeah.
no there's you lose it all. People complain about employees. So if you grow, I don't think employees are a big issue. I didn't have that problem. You have to get creative. We use the
Mm.
visa program. We were kind to our people. We respected them.
Yeah.
I would. They knew I had done it before, so there was nothing I was truly asking. I continue to buy equipment to make them more comfortable. So
Hmm.
if you plan on growing to a couple of trucks, which I think 3 trucks is the most profitable, and if I were to do it all over again, that's where I would max out at, and I'd be a very boutique firm, very low overhead, stay under $1 million, and be at a 35% margin. And it would
Hmm.
be easy. But I think you have to treat your guys with respect. You don't own them. You are lucky that they're showing up. Sure, you have to have boundaries, but too often I hear these people just griping about their employees. I'm like, listen, they're on Facebook too. They can see this. This is
Yeah.
why you're having the employee problem. So I think you can always get financing for equipment and trucks and all that. But if you can't find guys,
Mm.
then I don't even know if I would be in the business. So if you can't put yourself as an equal with other people, then I don't
Yeah.
even think you should. I don't even think you should enter because you. I
Yeah.
don't know. You guys, how many employees do you guys have?
I mean, we've got majority of our guys are, W-2 full salary folks. I think we've got 6 or 7 like that. And then we've got a couple of hourly guys. So right around 8 or 9, not including myself and
Right.
Ted.
So almost every guy has a unique situation I'm sure you have to cater to,
Yeah.
and so I think unless you've been in that experience, maybe you should just stay at the one truck. But once you pass 3 trucks, man, there's a big valley, and then you start doing a lot of work for 5 to 10%.
Uh-huh.
And I had a mentor tell me I don't get out of bed for 5%.
Right.
And there was a lot of days I got out of bed for less than 5%.
Yeah.
And so looking at that, it's like, why do HVAC guys and plumbing guys and electricians, why do they have only 1 or 2 trucks?
Mm.
Because they figure it out. That's all they need. Us
Yeah.
lawn care guys, we grow 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 trucks because we keep chasing something that's really not there. And less we sell, it's a
Mhm.
very, very easy company to sell. It's very attractive. People want it. And yeah, you've got to grow your revenue if that's your exit. But
Yeah. I've
uh,
had an idea for a long time, Michael, and I'm curious to see if anybody picks it up and runs with it, specifically around, landscaping and lawn care. And that is because if you walk out in my neighborhood, you'll see, I'm going to throw a random number out here, 25 plus different companies that are working on the yards in this neighborhood, and they pass by each other, every day. Trucks in and out, trailers in and out, all the equipment. This guy's, mowing this lawn. There's a different company right next door taking care of this lawn, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, man, if one of these companies could figure out how to get the majority of the business in this neighborhood, it would change I would imagine it changes that business and their lives pretty significantly, because, correct me if I'm wrong, your industry is very efficiency driven. Like, you don't want to be cutting one lawn here and then go 30 minutes across town to cut your next one, 20 minutes back this way. You try to optimize your routes. So if you can have a neighborhood, and maybe it's the only neighborhood, obviously how homes are in this neighborhood makes a difference. But if you had this one neighborhood and that was all that you serviced every single week because you had 50 to 100 homes that you took care of, or whatever that number is, I have to imagine that would be a game changer for that landscaping company. How am I in line with that, thinking that it would be a good
yeah,
idea? One,
so
and then two, how do you even go about trying to get that set up as a business owner?
God, I could speak on all this for hours. You might have to invite me back for a round 2 if
Yeah.
I didn't screw this up. But no, so we always try to drop our tailgate once. So I had to get our properties large enough to where we showed up. The guys did their service. They went to lunch, had lunch on site, continued service, and got home. A lot less risk driving around. You know, what have you. So on the residential market, I never understood why people looked at each other like they were competitors. For me, there's 8 million people that live in our area. Okay, there's plenty of homes and plenty of grass. If you gave me this sector and I give you that sector, we both can make a lot more money. So
Mm.
there's some Facebook groups that people are really starting to connect and look to each other as partners. And
Yeah.
they knew their service areas. And so we were very good about, hey, listen, this isn't my area or this isn't my space. You go ahead and grab it. And so I'm hoping that the industry makes a shift, that
Mm.
everyone doesn't feel so desperate to show up to go
Yeah.
hit that yard when this guy's got this. And so the only way to earn it is to cut your price, and then that guy
Yeah.
cuts their price. And so I think in my field, we all have to hold our ground, know our worth, look at each other as partners, figure out creative ways that we can work together so that we can say, hey, listen, Summer Creek Ranch, that's going to be your territory, but I want to take, Creekside,
Mm.
so whatever you guys get over there, forward it over here. And I just think that as trade partners, we have to work together for that. There's
Yeah.
online services that get the leads and they connect people, but I'm not in the business of having a national company
Yeah.
take money out of grinders' pockets.
Yeah.
So I think as trade partners, we have to do better. We have to look out for each other instead of cut each other knees
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
You
You're
know,
obviously
there's
looking at
only
it from. Go ahead.
yeah. I was saying there's always going to be the cheapest guy. We know that, and for whatever their situation might be, that's fine. But I think the core group of people that are doing work in the area can figure it out among themselves to be profitable and efficient. And that's just by sharing with each
Yeah,
other.
it
I think
makes a
it's the
lot of
only way it works.
yeah. I
So,
mean, yeah, and that's obviously from the supplier side. And I'm curious if this would work, or if there's some idea that somebody could run with on the consumer side, right? Homeowners. I know there's a company here in Charlotte that specifically is looking to attack and cater. They've been doing this for a number of years now, and however successful they are or not is unknown to me. But basically, they are a technology company that connects homeowners with home service businesses, and they do it by way of like incentivizing Sally Sue to go, the next time she needs her air ducts cleaned, to let her neighbors know. And those are obviously one-time projects that
yeah.
make it a little bit more applicable for that type of model. But I'm curious if something like that within the landscaping space would be like, maybe you put a post out on that app and you're like, hey, I just moved to the neighborhood like I did 8 months ago, and I'm looking for a good lawn care company. And then somebody's like, oh, I use Joe Smith over here at XYZ. And I'm like, cool. And they're like, if you sign up, I get 5% off my monthly bill or whatever the case may be. And then it becomes almost like the homeowners are getting together to give Joe Schmo that business. But it obviously decreases his
Yeah.
margins if he's having to reduce his price like that.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some IT that can figure it out that if for every person that signs up in the neighborhood, everyone's rate drops 2% or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not smart enough to figure that out. um, I know that we took work on the same street plenty of times, or even if we had 3/4 of a route filled and we had something deadheading back, we grabbed it, even if it was break even.
Right.
To fulfill a schedule. But I think technology's headed there. But I also know people, and
Yeah.
it's always people are always you could do an awesome job for this person, and this other person doesn't like you, and so
Right.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
I think that at the end of the day, us as trade partners, we all have to do a better job of making sure that we all survive.
Makes a lot of sense.
And And if we're still out there trying to kill each other, then homeowners know that we're trying to kill each other, and they're going to take
Yeah.
advantage of
Hmm.
that.
I'm with you.
I mean,
Well,
why,
let
why
me end it with this. Yeah, let me end it with this, Michael. We like to ask at the end of every episode, just if, knowing what you know now, and obviously you've been through a lot, including the sell of a company, knowing what you know now, what would you go back and tell Michael first coming out of college, or whenever, just years ago, what would you go back and tell him?
um, got a lot. No, in short, I wish I would have. I made a lot of money. You can make a lot of money in the service industry. If you're a hard worker, you definitely can. There's no doubt about it. If you're not making money, then you're not working hard enough. You're not answering your phone. I wish I would have saved a lot more of that. We took on some debt that was pretty careless. I think that debt's important to have to scale, but unless it's tied to an actual asset that's still in your fleet, whatever it might be, you just cannot do it. And so you hear all these guys like, "Oh, I avoided this tax and I did this, or I've got this F-250." Trust me, when I sold and that haircut came off with my debt payment, I was like, "Oh my god." I mean, I bet half of that was not tied to any hard assets. We called it, second, third, fourth, fifth college degree. That would be number one. Number two is eventually you're going to exit.
Mhm.
Either you're going to die, the business is going to die, or it's going to sell. When
Right.
you could sell it to your kiddo, whatever it might be. But your kid, you can't bank on the fact that your kid wants to run it. So those are really your three options. And so when you do exit, you need to have some form of income coming in afterwards. And that needs to be established well before. You can't do what I did and just wake up one day and be like, yeah, I want to sell.
Yeah.
Um, I have my days busy, but from my income standpoint, I really put myself, I think, in a little bit of a bind because I'm literally starting from the bottom. And I wish I had something that was kind of already being built behind the scenes. So.
Well, Michael, thank you for joining, man. This was great. We definitely would likely need to do a part two to continue picking your brain here, but great insight to start, especially since you are in the home services space again. You built, you sold, and went through that whole process. It's always cool to hear folks process on that. If you want to be found online or you want folks to contact you, what's the best place and for them to reach out to you?
Man, right now, the best way to find me is through Facebook. Michael Whittaker. I'm launching I've got a launch, but I don't want to send people there. A website. It's not fully built out, but find me on, Michael Whittaker at Facebook or, Onyx Designs, DFW at Gmail, and shoot me a deal. But I truly want to help other contractors in the home services become better. And so I'm an open book. I've got no secrets. I didn't do everything right, but I can tell you everything I did wrong to stay away from. So
cool.
It's kind of hard to put 17 years into 30 minutes, but maybe we can give another 30-minute slot some other time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we appreciate it again. And yeah, best of luck to you in your future endeavors. And I'm sure you and I will obviously be in touch and keep talking and just be resources for each other. So again, thank you.
I appreciate you, buddy. Have a good one. All right.